Joining us now to discuss is Andy Palmer. He's the former CEO of Aston Martin. He's the former COO at Nissan, where he was instrumental in launching the world's first mass-market EV, the Nissan Leaf. He's now the chair of Switch Mobility and vice chair of InnoBat. Andy, thank you for your time today. We greatly appreciate it. Look, Europe is now starting to invest belatedly in this switch to EV. Volkswagen is throwing huge amounts of money at this process. What do you think of the ambition? Is it enough?
Well, it's late. It's 15 years ago that I started working on the Nissan Leaf, so it's taken a long time to get to this point. But I think the size of the VW announcement today is basically putting the rest of the industry on notice that VW is going all in on EV, all in on batteries, all in on the infrastructure development. So it's very clear that this is the direction of travel. And I guess that they look enviously at Tesla's market cap and say, we'd like to be seen in the same light, with the same sorts of capabilities in that as auto tech stock. So yeah, it's a huge announcement. It's amazing, actually. It really is huge. A little late, but not too late, I think.
What do you think they would have to deliver, and in what kind of time frame to justify a valuation like Tesla?
Well, look, they're talking about 50 new electric cars by 2030, and you compare that to the Tesla range, obviously, of 3 cars going on 4. You can see the speed of the transformation that's happening. So this is a really ambitious program, not only with the cars themselves, but with 240 gigawatt hours of battery capacity. That's huge. That really is huge. That's six new gigaplants, each of them around 40 gigawatt hours per year. Really huge investments. So if there's anything that they can do to catch up on the market cap as Tesla, to be seen in the same context as Tesla, this announcement goes an awful long way towards that.
Cost is the other big factor, Andy. You can make batteries, but they have to be cheap enough. Does scale bring the cost down sufficiently quick enough, do you think?
Well, it's a combination of scale and technology, in fact. I remember the prices of the batteries when I first started on electric cars, and they were through the roof. Look, today I think VW is saying that it's got a roadmap to significantly below 100 euros per kilowatt hour. That's kind of the holy grail. That's where EVs over life become cheaper than petrol engines. But it's not just purchasing power. Yes, you build all of these gigaplants, you're going to have efficiencies, but it's also technology. And they've hinted at the cell to pack technology. This is where you miss out stages of a current batteries construction. You miss out the canning of the cells, and you go directly into either into the pack or into the car itself. So by decontenting the battery, you're obviously bringing down the cost of the battery, and I guess that's the kind of innovations that they're looking at.
Are car companies missing an opportunity to go heavier with hydrogen fuel cells now?
No, look, I'm a great believer in letting Darwinism work its magic. In other words, let engineers try different types of technology. But if you were to ask me to stake a bet on where I thought the technology was going to end up, I would say that basically all of that last 1 mile, passenger cars up to and including SUVs, will almost certainly move across to EV. That urban buses as well has to be EV. Probably you look at fuel cell, I would say in the heavy goods vehicle segment where you need range. And then there's emerging technology of synthetic fuels, which I think is going to be obviously used in the aeronautical business, but possibly also in drones, flying cars, and even the supercar segment. And that's where you use hydrogen to allow you to create essentially gasoline, but synthetic where you're net zero. So I think these are the 3 key technologies. The margins might blend. You might see fuel cells coming into SUVs, but I think in general, the industry sees EV as the majority solution.
Yeah, certainly Diess talking about that today. E-mobility has won the race, quote from Herbert Diess. Let's talk about what comes next. The race at the moment, Andy, is about batteries, and that's where the battle lies currently. securing enough capacity. But then there's the next stage, and this is where we come to the gap in terms of the valuation. Tesla is already kind of in the process of becoming a software company. It's a hardware company that is evolving and morphing into a software company. And we're going to see others. Alphabet's clearly going to be in on this space, as are many other software companies as well. How does a German giant like Volkswagen, with a 7-year cycle in which it switches over its vehicles, become nimble enough to be constantly updating its vehicles and become a software company that is constantly kind of evolving and innovating?
It's tough. And that's where you see the difference. It's where you see the difference. I mean, even from my own point of view, I remember talking with Elon Musk nearly 15 years ago, where we were talking about the HMI, the infotainment system. I was developing the Leaf, and he was developing his first vehicle, the S. And I was talking about using, in a classical way, the suppliers to help bring that infotainment to bear. And he was talking about developing his own software and doing it all by himself. And I remember distinctly calling him mad. And we had a joke about it over dinner. And basically I said, well, let's see who wins. He was right. I was wrong. Basically, the future is very much around software. It's very much around owning that data and knowing what to do with that data, and that's difficult for companies the size of VW to be able to pivot to that, because they're hardware companies basically.
So are we living in a world where we're going to see these big changes from these big car companies, yet we can't necessarily compare them to Tesla, even though they may be making similar cars, because they're just doing it differently and they're too big to truly rotate?
Well, you're going to see a number of things. You're going to see some car companies just disappearing. They can't pivot quickly enough. You'll see some of the tech companies partnering with car companies. Remember, a lot of software companies and tech companies have tried to do cars and have failed because they can't do the mechanical stuff. So in many ways, it makes a lot of sense for the likes of Apple or Google to work together with car companies in order to bring the benefits of both, that speed of software development with the intrinsic difficulties of the mechanical development. And then, of course, you've got companies like Tesla, which are small in scale but large in market cap, because they can do both. And I think basically the traditional car companies have got to make a decision of die or live. And if they live, then they've either got to pivot around doing software themselves, which is a big ask, or they've got to start partnering with these tech companies.
Andy, you've been critical that the UK has been slow, particularly when it comes to building battery plants that are needed to serve a UK auto industry. But my question to you is, where is the value really going to lie in the auto sector going forward? Do you want to be involved in metal bashing and battery building, or do you want to be potentially involved in the potentially higher margin areas, such as software? Different countries have different skill sets. Do you still want to be a car maker at this stage? Well,
I mean, in the UK, the metal bashing, as you call it, employs over 850,000 people. It's a lot of people. It's a big part of the economy. It's putting a lot of dinners on the tables of British people. So, and we're good at it, relatively speaking. We're good at making particularly higher-end premium and luxury cars, and long may that be so. And if you're going to make cars, and if you decide that's your intention, which I think we should, then you have to have the battery factories nearby. These batteries are getting ever further integrated into the car. As I said, they're big and heavy, 400 kilograms typically. They're really expensive, so you don't want a lot of them in the supply chain, because that's an awful lot of inventory to be carrying on your balance sheet. So it's vital that you make the battery near the car. If you don't make the battery near the car makers will move to where the batteries are being made, and that's the risk to the UK. However, as you say, the margins in battery manufacturing are not huge. The margins in car manufacturing are not huge, and the difference is in the middle, in that area of software. And those automakers that want to stay relevant, still want to have that high market cap, aspire to being Tesla, they need to develop that area of software.
Andy, last question. We talked about the European car manufacturers and we talked about Tesla. What we didn't talk about is the Chinese, because that is where the growth really is right now for EVs. And they have a lot of their own startups like XPeng, NIO. They have a ton of other money that's been pumped into local companies. Where do they fit on the spectrum of big OEMs versus a Tesla?
It's a fascinating long-term strategy to China. They were clearly late to the gasoline engine. They were clearly late to the hybrid. But they took a central policy, a country-level policy decision to leapfrog all that and go across into EVs, full in on EVs. And they now have an entire capability, an entire supply chain capable of developing EVs. They have something like 99% of the world's EV buses, for example. And obviously they've had now 5 or 6 years of development of the EV and the supply chain, and they're very highly vertically integrated insofar as they've also got the rare metals for the vehicles. So China's in a good position. Look, some of the startups failed because they didn't understand how to make cars, but some of those more recent successes will undoubtedly be part of the future of automotive, 100 years from now. So it's a really important leap and a very clever central policy that was taken that's allowed China in the car making world to come from nowhere.
Andy, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for sharing some of it with us.